World Championship. Ancient castles and picturesque chalets dominate the jaw-dropping countryside. But now the hills will come alive with the sound of MotoGP bikes as Marc Marquez looks to capture a 12th sprint win in a dominant 2025. It's time for Moto GP. So first built back in 1969, known then as the Austrian ring, also known previously as the A1 ring before it reopened as the Red Bull ring. 14 years ago now, back in 2011. It's pretty tight, it's pretty compact, just 4.34 kilometers in length. But it's a tricky old circuit to navigate, is this one in Spielberg. Lots of hard braking zones, lots of low gear, hard acceleration zones as well. It packs a bit of punch. It does, the Spielberg circuit. Sector 4, turns 9 and 10, always a late drama down the years through there. Hard braking up into turn 1, 2A the chicane, and down the hill into turn 4. Overtaking hot spots, just 10 corners, but plenty of opportunities to make your moves. This was Marc Marquez on Marco Bezzecchi into the 2A, 2B chicane, introduced, of course, back in 2022. Well, it seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? Just before we headed off on our summer holidays, we were in the Czech Republic in Brno for the first time in 5 years, with Pecco Bagnaia launching away from pole position. Did not take long, though, for his factory Ducati teammate Marc Marquez to hit the front, hotly pursued by the hard-charging Aprilia star Marco Bezzecchi, who did hit the front with that big move at turn 1. Contact further down the order for Alex Marquez saw him lose more crucial ground in the World Championship as Pedro Acosta toughed it out with Bagnaia for a place on the podium. Marc Marquez, though, hit the front on lap 7 and he cruised to what was a historic milestone victory, the first Ducati rider ever to win 5 Grand Prix in a row. And, of course, in 2025, the story, the theme of Sprint Saturdays has very much been the dominance of the number 93. 32-year-old Spaniard Marc Marquez has won 11 of our 12 sprints so far this season, although he has got a little bit of work to do in the upcoming 14-lap sprint here in the Styria Mountains, because for just the third time in our 13 Grand Prix so far this season, Marc finds himself off the front row of the grid. A costly late crash going into the chicane in Q2 this morning. Q2 which made sure that MotoGP was back from the beach with a bang. What a session it was, over 15 minutes in Q2 this morning. A surprise name, maybe a shock in some respects, to see a factory Aprilia on top of the pile. What a moment it was for Marco Bezzecchi. A 128.060, firing bears to his first Aprilia pole position, his first in 40 Grand Prix since the Indian round back in 2023. Just a 9th MotoGP pole position for the factory Aprilia team, their first since Aleix Espargaro headed qualifying at Silverstone in 2024. So already a memorable Saturday for Aprilia. This followed what was a pretty tough Friday, particularly for the factory team, as Marco Bezzecchi found himself way down the order in 18th place. Bez leads the field away then for the 14-lap sprint this afternoon and the Grand Prix of Austria for round 13 over 28 laps tomorrow afternoon. In the company of Matt Burton, Lewis Sotheby in the commentary box as always, down in pit lane and on the grid. Keeping on top of all the off-track action will be Jack Appleyard. But Marco Bezzecchi, well, the star of the Saturday show so far this morning. I don't think too many of us saw it coming, really, Lewis, with Bez down in 18th place at the end of play yesterday, and given what is a pretty average record for the factory Aprilias around the Red Bull ring.
Didn't see anything close to that coming after what we saw yesterday. He had to get through qualifying 1 first, cleared that hurdle, and went all the way to pole position. As Jack Appleyard said to Bez in Parc Fermé, with a little bit of help from his friends, he was given a slight toe and reference from Pecco Bagnaia on his way to that pole position, but take nothing away from Bez. He had to do the lap, and to do the lap he did to pip Alex Marquez by 16 thousandths of a second. First time ever we've seen an Aprilia on pole position in MotoGP at the Red Bull Ring. Whether Bezzecchi can stay there, well, only time will tell, because he's of course got a trio of Ducatis, the top three in the World Championship, right behind him. But for now, it's Bez that leads the field off in Austria.
In each of our last 3 Grand Prix, at some phase of the weekend, he has found himself on the podium. Bez, a double podium finisher in Assen at the end of June. Second in the sprint at the Sachsenring in Germany. That also really should have been a double podium, shouldn't it, after he dumped it when second in the main Grand Prix. And, of course, he was chief challenger to Marc Marquez's dominance last time out in the Grand Prix of Czechia. So 3 podiums in his last 6 Grand Prix. He has really found his form on the factory at Aprilia. Second on the front row of the grid once again is Alex Marquez. That's his 10th front row start of the season so far. Let's see what Alex can do from second place. He missed out on just a second ever career pole in MotoGP by a real narrow margin, just a whisker under 200ths of a second on the Gresini Ducati.
Now, of course, he came into the weekend already knowing that he was going to serve a long lap penalty for taking out Joan Mir in Brno. That does not apply to this afternoon's Tissot sprint. He will serve that long lap penalty tomorrow in the 28-lap Grand Prix of Austria. So in terms of challenging for a win this weekend, this Saturday sprint might well be Alex Marquez's biggest and best opportunity.
So a little bit of a blip this morning at the end of Q2 for Marc Marquez when he crashed, losing the front on the factory Ducati, going through 2B, the second of the chicane sections in the first part of the lap. As I mentioned, a blip, because he had been superb all weekend so far. Fastest on Friday morning, fastest yesterday afternoon. A big gap then of 0.4 of a second back to the pack after he led FP2 this morning. Through 2 previous times he's qualified off the front row this season. He has been able to back it up and score podiums in the sprint and the Grand Prix in both. That was at Silverstone and in Assen. This was the drama late on in what was a dramatic 15-minute Q2. Was never really settled as he flinged it right through 2A. And it wasn't meant to be through 2B in terms of pole position number 74 for the 32-year-old Spaniard, who has been untouchable. He has been imperious on Sprint Saturday so far this season. 11 sprint wins in 12. The 3 points, the only 3 points that Marc has dropped on Saturday afternoons so far this season came at Silverstone when he was second to brother Alex.
What we have seen through this season so far, when he has qualified, I say poorly in inverted commas, a poor qualifying for Marc Marquez, is P4, equals his worst of the season, is he's very aggressive in the first lap of the sprint and the Grand Prix, trying to get himself to the front. So it's going to be interesting to see just how aggressive Marc Marquez is. Of course, in an ideal world, he would want to make up as many places as he can off the line up to turn 1, but it is a difficult turn 1 the further back down the field you are, because it is very tight and the corner tightens up out of turn 1 on the way out down towards the chicane of turns 2A and B. So if Marc Marquez doesn't get off the line particularly well, he might have to play it patient on that first lap.
Well, in the sprint and Grand Prix era here in Austria, Pecco Bagnaia has not lost. He has won the lot. 2 sprint wins, 2 Grand Prix wins in 2023 and in 2024. And he does fire the factory Ducati away from the front row of the grid, albeit when he spoke to Jack in Parc Fermé after that 3rd place for the 1:28.202, didn't look exactly overly happy with the situation on that GP25, and he might well have actually been bumped off the front row late on had it not been for a dramatic final corner for Pedro Acosta on the factory KTM, who's going to line up 7th. He'll head row 3, the 21-year-old Spaniard, where he was all in. If you joined us this morning at the conclusion of what was a real nail-biting, thrilling conclusion to Q2, Acosta looked like he was going to be threatening the front row when he had a massive moment on the front end of the factory KTM going through turn 10. Ultimately, that cost him quite dearly. He will head row 3 in 7th. It was certainly spectacular to watch Acosta, though, tackle the Red Bull Ring this morning.
Is he going to go all in the sprint as well? Of course, if there's anywhere that Pedro Acosta would dearly love to take a victory of any sort, sprint or Grand Prix for the first time on board a KTM, it would be here at their home Grand Prix. There's Jorge Martin getting set for his 3rd sprint appearance, of course, of the season. Qualified in 14th place, which was by no means a disgrace given how little track time he's got on board that Aprilia earlier on today. So Martin will, I guess, have his work cut out to get himself into the points. Points down to 9th place, of course, in this sprint. But really for Martin, it's all about keeping himself out of trouble, just getting lap after lap under his belt and closing in on some sort of base setup on board that RSGP.
Well, it's a familiar feeling. Ducati winning on sprint Saturdays. They have won the last 26 sprints. Coincidentally, their last defeat was to a factory Aprilia. Aleix Espargaro inflicting a rare defeat in the sprint format on Ducati over a year ago. Can it be the current factory Aprilia star of Marco Bezzecchi who can maybe upset the form buck and upset the apple cart here this afternoon? Over 14 laps, will be lights out and racing in the sprint in about 20 minutes time. It's Valentino Rossi. Well, I wonder if he's going to claim the Tissot watch that Marco Bezzecchi got for just his 5th career pole position in MotoGP, because Bez did mention some words of wisdom. Not a bad ally to have inside your garage, is it? Valentino Rossi offering some encouragement and some, as we mentioned, words of wisdom to Marco Bezzecchi. He was trackside pretty much throughout the whole of the proceedings yesterday. Was Valentino Rossi casting a beady eye, not just, of course, on these 2 charges, Morbidelli and Gian Antonio, but also keeping close tabs on Bezzecchi, Bagnaia and Luca Marini, part of the VR46 Academy. So yeah, good to see Valentino here, and certainly good to see him helping one of his riders to a pole position here in Austria.
He usually parks himself up at the chicane, doesn't he, at turn 2, so we'll see if he's watching there trackside when the sprint gets underway. A sprint that will have 20 starting. Fortunately, news that doesn't come as a great surprise to anyone that's been following the story of Maverick Vinales through this Grand Prix weekend is that he has withdrawn from this Austrian Grand Prix, not able to do a run beyond sort of 5 or 6 laps really at any stage this weekend. The job for him in the sprint would have been to do 14. Vinales has withdrawn due to that shoulder pain. We will see him hopefully once again in Hungary next Friday.
Well, there are huge expectations, big expectations on the shoulders of Marquez to deliver a 12th sprint win in 13 so far this season. Can Pecco Bagnaia retain his undefeated record in sprints here in Austria? They fire away from 3rd and 4th respectively. Let's get some pre-sprint thoughts from the boss, Davide Tardozzi, who's with Jack. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Yeah, good afternoon to everybody down here on a sun-kissed Red Bull Ring grid. Davide, those are the 2 big questions coming into this one. Firstly, let's touch on Mark. Obviously didn't go to plan for him in qualifying to end up on the 2nd row of the grid, but I'm sure he still fancies his chances here. His pace looked excellent this morning.
Yeah, it looks that he have a very good race pace, but I think that there are at least 6 riders that can fight for the podium, including our 2 guys. So it will be a very incredible race. I'm sure that this racetrack it suits the fight, and I'm sure that those riders will give us an incredible show.
Pecco was very positive yesterday, less so after qualifying. Have you made any tweaks ahead of the sprint?
No, he had not really good confidence with the front with the second qualify, but in the end he's in the 1st row, and I think that he can fight for the podium him too.
You mentioned 6. Who are they? Bagnaia, Marquez ×2, Bezzecchi. Who else?
Yeah,
Acosta,
Alex and Acosta.
Bastianini looks strong as well.
Who?
Bastianini.
Bastianini could be, you are right, could be the surprise, because in the last race I think he found something, and Enea is a fighter, and I guess that he can do something very good.
I think we're in for a show. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's hope we are in for a spectacular sprint show here in Spielberg. The stop-and-go nature of this 4.34-kilometre layout means that this is a very fuel-thirsty circuit. You just constantly hard braking, close throttle, and then to full throttle on the low gear acceleration point. So fuel consumption has always been a factor around this Spielberg track, and that's why you just witnessed arguably one of the slowest sighting laps you'll see of the season all year long, as everybody comes to the grid in fuel saving mode ahead of what will be this 14-lap sprint.
Just as long as you remember to disable that fuel-saving eco map, which Aprilia have fallen foul of before, famously in Japan a few years ago, when Aleix Espargaro had to to pull into the pits. I'm sure they are wise to that one now, as Marco Bezzecchi pulls onto pole position. And I guess the big challenge initially for Bezzecchi is getting himself up to turn 1 first. We do know that the Ducatis are super quick off the line, as are the KTMs, although for Bezzecchi the first of those up behind him is 4 places further back in the shape of Renee Bastianini. Here is how the grid lines up then. Bezzecchi, Alex Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia on the front row. We remind you, Alex Marquez does not serve a long lap penalty until tomorrow's Grand Prix. Marc Marquez 4th for Renee Bastianini and Fermin Aldeguer. Pedro Acosta 7th, and certainly looked to have the pace for more than that earlier on. Frankie Morbidelli and Raul Fernandez join him on row 3. Mir, Binder and Zarco are your 4th row of the grid. Zarco has already crashed twice so far today. Luca Marini lines up 13th there, the world champion Jorge Martin and Fabio Di Gianantonio. We haven't seen a Yamaha yet. That's because Fabio Quartararo is down in 16th, his worst of the season. Alex Rins and Miguel Oliveira complete an all Yamaha 6th row. Ayagura, disappointing this morning, you have to say, 19th, and Jack Miller completes our grid of 20 after the withdrawal of Maverick Vinales.
Well, he was buzzing after his first double podium of the season in Brno before the summer break, wasn't he, Pedro Acosta? And he's been really happy with some summer break upgrades from the factory KTM team as well. 7th, heading row 3 is Acosta. You feel that he's going to be in the game for the podium in the sprint this afternoon on the Grand Prix tomorrow. Let's get the thoughts of his crew chief, Paul Trebathan, who's with Jack.
Yeah, Pedro's been right at it all weekend long, but from the front to the 3rd row of the grid, Paul, it just makes your life and his a little bit more complicated than I'm thinking you were thinking it was going to be with 2 minutes left in qualifying.
Yeah, for sure, mate. You know, it's we know in the MotoGP class at the moment the start is everything, and being in the front is makes the job so much easier. So to be honest, we put many good laps together this weekend. The pace has been very good. He's riding well, and yeah, pushing on the limit, those sort of things can happen for sure. So but anyway, we're in the better side of the grid, I think, to be this far back, have a bit more room to maneuver, and if we can get a good jump off the line, then let's see what we can do.
Good luck.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Paul Trebathan. He has been a star performer this weekend for KTM, has Acosta, although we have to say, and this shows what a top job Bastianini has produced this weekend, because the Italian, somewhat surprisingly for the first time this year, is the top KTM qualifier. 5th place on the grid goes the beast. Of course, he was on the sprint podium last time out in Brno with Acosta, ploughing a lone furrow, sadly, with Maverick Vinales withdrawing for the remainder of this weekend. But I'm sure there are big hopes for a repeat of his Brno brilliance in the sprint for the beast. Let's get the thoughts on the boss. Hervé Ponchavallo joins Jack.
Hervé, top KTM for Enea, middle of the 2nd row of the grid. I have to say, he's my dark horse for this one. Is he yours?
Yes, you know, since Czech Republic, you know, the feeling is a lot better. We don't really understand why, but this is the fact. And since the beginning of the weekend, we knew we were, you know, competitive. Very sad and pissed off, to be honest, on Friday night to miss the direct access to Q2. He did what he had to do this morning to go through Q2. Top KTM, as you mentioned. Ideal time is quite good because both Fredo and himself are P3 and 4. So we know the potential is there. We know we don't have any real issue for race distance, at least for the sprint. It's going to be down to a good start, be aggressive enough in the first 3 laps as usual, and hopefully you know, we'll see him in a position which is at least matching the one he has on the grid.
Fingers crossed. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hervé. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, Enea wasn't even 4/10, just about 400ths of a second he was away from what would have been a sensational front row start. And as Hervé Ponchavallo there, Tech 3 boss just alluded to, ideal times, which is when you put all of a rider's best 4 sectors together in the session. Well, it was a front row for Enea Bastianini. It has been a miserable, it has been a shocking, you can't sugarcoat it, it's been a horror show so far this weekend for Yamaha. Their lead qualifier is Fabio Quartararo in 16th place. Never looked like he was going to get out of that heavyweight Q1 session. His worst qualifying of the season, lowest grid position for Fabio since Phillip Island last year. We were just looking at Jack Miller there. If you're a Jack Miller fan, you might want to put your fingers in your ears or put the old TV on mute right now, because Jack's starting from 20th place on the YZR M1. That is his lowest qualifying since his rookie season, nearly 10 years ago at Valencia back in 2015. Alex Rins 17th, Miguel Oliveira 18th. it feels like it's going to be a turn-the-page job after this weekend for Yamaha, Lewis.
Get themselves to Balaton Park pretty quickly, I think, from their point of view. And generally, when you see the 4 riders on one motorcycle all together on the grid, 16th, 17th, 18th and 20th, that pretty much tells you that that is the level of the bike. Not even Fabio Quartararo, with all of the heroics we've seen from him on Saturdays so far this year, could muscle that M1 into qualifying 2. Of course, there is still plenty to race for. Of course, we have seen some attritional battles over the course of the year, but surely just any kind of points will be a reward for Yamaha here today, as a business-like Pedro Acosta trudges down pit lane. He'll head over to the 3rd row of the grid, and surely there's only one thing in Pedro Acosta's mind, and that is attack.
Yeah, 2nd in the sprint in Brno, an excellent 3rd place in the Grand Prix as well. Casey Stone, a MotoGP legend, soaking up the atmosphere there down on the grid. I think he's just close to Marco Bezzecchi in pole position, just offering a little bit of a handshake and a good look message there to our pole start on the factory. Brilliant. Speaking of factory, brilliant. It's been an incredible day, hasn't it, as far as the Nuali factory are concerned. Pole position for Marco Bezzecchi. Can he get the job done over 14 laps? Well, let's get the thoughts of the boss, Paolo Bonora, who's with Jack.
Yeah, Paolo, just chatting to Marco Bezzecchi's crew chief and the Michelin technician. Paolo, we were just in front of Casey giving a good look message to Marco there. You're hoping he's managed to rub off a little bit of his talent on Marco ahead of this one?
Yeah, first of all, we have to thank him because he did a very good lap time during the qualifying. It was hard because moving from Q1 to Q2 was not easy, but he did a great job, as well as Jorge. Despite of a 10, he didn't have the opportunity to be in Q2. But by the way, it is the natural process to be again with our bike, and we expect in the next race to be more in the front also with him. To be in the front is surely an advantage, but it is necessary to take care in this circuit because the hard braking is so crucial point that is necessary to manage until the end of the race.
Just looking at the lap times that we've seen throughout the weekend, it looks like Mark might just have a little bit on everybody else, but then there's 4, 5, maybe even 6 riders that very difficult to judge who's faster than the other.
Yeah, you're right. We struggle a little bit in the first 2 split, but seeing from yesterday, we have a little bit an advantage on the 3rd and the 4th. So we have to keep in mind this potential of our bike and take the advantage for the second part of the race.
Good luck, Paolo.
Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Jack. Thanks as always to Paolo Bonora, baking hot conditions here in Austria. That was some shot, wasn't it? There's a whole bunch of MotoGP legends knocking around the Spielberg paddock this weekend. Casey Stone, we've seen Andrea Dovizioso's here, Danny Pedrosa, Valentino Rossi is here, and as he was making his way off the grid, just coming back onto the grid was his old foe and nemesis Marquez. I don't think there was even a glance, not even a split-second look between the pair of them as they cross paths down in pit lane. The crowd are on their feet. They are hungry for more home success. Ducati, in terms of Grand Prix around this Spielberg circuit since we came back in 2016, have been dominant. 11 races, 9 wins for Ducati. The only times they have been beaten have been by KTMs on Sundays. Of course, Miguel Oliveira's first win for Tech 3. What a day that was in the Styrian round in 2020. And that unforgettable afternoon, the flag-to-flag drama for Brad Binder in 2021. They are the only non-Ducati Grand Prix wins here in Austria.
We're not expecting any kind of flag-to-flag action here this afternoon, even if there were 1 or 2 spots of rain falling at the end of qualifying 2 earlier on today. Can't say with great certainty that it'll be the same tomorrow. We shall see when we open our curtains tomorrow morning what kind of weather we're awaiting, because it is rather temperamental in this part of the world. Still 1 or 2 forecasts, though there might be some thunderstorms in the area tomorrow for race day, but the sprint is set fair for dry conditions.
Alex Marquez, minus a sprint medal around his neck since the Dutch TT in Assen. 8th in the Saxon Ring, and he was out of the points, a long way out of the points last time out in Brno. Can he get himself back in that podium fight? Well, he's got a great chance. 2nd on the grid. Let's get the thoughts of his boss, Michele Massini.
Yeah, an excellent job by Alex this morning to put himself on the front row of the grid, but just looking in free practice too, and yesterday in the early part of the session, he didn't sound too comfortable in the rhythm. Do you feel you've been able to make enough progress that he can be right there at the front in this one, Michele?
I think that yesterday we made a clever Friday, because I think that we work jumping again on a MotoGP bike is not so easy on the, especially in the Friday morning, but I think that today we show our speed. The first throw is already important, so now we need to push for the sprint, and then we'll see tomorrow also with the long lap that we have to make.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck to all concerned at Gresini Racing. We should mention as well Alex's teammate Fermin Aldeguer, who's been a little bit under the radar so far this weekend, but he delivered an exceptional performance in Q2 this morning. Aldeguer will go from the back of row 2 in 6th place, just the 3rd time this season in his rookie campaign that he has qualified inside the top 6, along with Le Mans and Silverstone. They are the recommended discs from Brembo, the 355mm, to cope with the excessive temperature build-up you get in the front discs around this Red Bull Ring circuit. Harsh braking zones into turn 1, into 2A, turn 3, and in particular down the hill into turn 4. If you're going to make moves, if you're going to make overtakes in this sprint and Grand Prix tomorrow, you have to be very, very precise, because any kind of mistake on the front end. Yeah, I was just thinking, actually, I did think that Pedro Acosta had gone over to, well, has he gone down to the medium now? He was originally on the hard front, so he's now down to the medium. There's been a couple of times where the KTMs, because they do like to make up time in braking zones, we know how good the KTM is at stopping. So a late change. Acosta was initially going to go for the hard front, but he seems to have gone with the majority pick. Medium front, soft rear tyre.
Yeah, of course, no real concerns over rear tyre life over the course of the sprint distance over 14 laps. Of course, that may well change tomorrow. Alex Marquez with his brother right over his shoulder. And Alex Marquez, second, of course, in the World Championship. Yes, he's 120 points behind Marc Marquez, and he would dearly love to close that down. But really, from Alex Marquez's point of view, it's about managing that 48-point gap back to Pecco Bagnaia, who starts right next to him on the front row of the grid. Top 3 in the World Championship start 4th, 3rd, 2nd. They're all looking up ahead at Marco Bezzecchi's Aprilia.
Mark has already done the business on Sprint Saturdays 11 times out of 12. He has not yet finished lower than 2nd in a sprint so far in 2025. 141 of his 381 points collected so far have been picked up on Sprint Saturdays alone. To think that we're in round 13, he's dropped just 3 points on Sprint Saturday so far this season is just testament to how good Marquez has been in the short format on Saturday afternoons. We're getting a look then at the runaway World Championship leader, 120 points clear of brother Alex. He is ahead of this 14-lap sprint coming your way next live in just under 4 minutes time here in Austria. Front row then completed by Pecco Bagnaia, who's never lost a sprint here in Spielberg. Alex Marquez, second in the World Championship, on the middle of the front row in 2nd place. But for the first time as a factory Aprilia rider, Marco Bezzecchi starts from pole position. Can he break the Marquez Saturday domination?